Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Maliga Young Pagdating Sa my chess, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. You know I'm always extra with it, just for no reason at all. But we do have the finals of the Chessable Masters tournament going on. So we do have Wesley versus Quang Liêm. So as always, for my people in the Philippines, I will say mabuhay to you guys. Magandang umaga, kamusta na? Masaya akong makiti kang muli. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. And I got the good mornings and another phrase. I actually put from the comments that I get from people, I try to translate and try to learn everything that they're saying. So then that way I can kind of have like a little bit better understanding so I can reply back. So I'd say probably about 20 to 25% of the comments that you guys get from me in Tagalog is actually me speaking Tagalog myself. The other portion, of course, is going to be translated, especially when you see those gigantic long responses. They're definitely translated. But I do take bits and pieces of either what is translated or what people say to me. And I jot it down so I can try to, learn, as much as possible. So I do have two different comments from a long time ago that I wrote down separately that I kind of jammed together. So let me know if it does sound correct. It seems like it did when I looked at the translation, but I will get that at the end of the video. And from anybody who is coming from Vietnam, I will say Jiao Mui Nui and Cam On Ban. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by and taking a look at my stuff. If you guys are ready to go, this is the third game, and it is so it's the third. So they just played the first match right now. So they played through the first matches of the 4 games. So this is the third game from that. So if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. So we got e4, e5. Knight comes to f3. We see knight to c6, bishop to b5. So we have a6. So we have the Roy Lopez, and this is the Morphy defense. We have bishop back to a4, which is most commonly going to be played. You can see it, but it's a little bit more rare for you to go into the exchange variation. We see knight coming to f6, so a Berlin type of situation. We do have castles, as you guys know. I mean, you're not going to be grabbing a free pawn here because, the d4 is going to come, rook to e1 is going to come, bishop to take on c6 is going to come, and you are going to be able to get your pawn back. So the bishop comes to e7 to cover any e-file situations. So we do have rook to e1 to make sure that we defend that e4 pawn now. b5 comes, we see bishop to b3. We see d6. And this, allows the tempo for c3. So, we have a retreat square, plus as well, when the knight is developed somewhere, we're going to be able to maybe tuck the bishop back into b1. We have castles by black, h3. Bishop comes to b7. We have d4, which is pretty much always going to come. Rook comes over to e8. And we have a kind of an interesting moment here. Knight comes to g5. And I'm always talking to you guys about the weakness of this f7 and f2 pawn. We're just kind of tickling a pawn and saying, hey, man, what are you trying to do? There is no way to block this. So you just are forced to retreat back to f8. We see knight coming back to f3, and then we do have a repeat of position with rook to e8. And we actually have seen, so in the game, we actually see knight b to d2. But in the database, there are a lot of draws that just basically just go back and forth, like what we just saw. And I mean, I guess for some people, it's a drawing line. I personally don't like draws at all, period. It doesn't matter if you're high rated or low rated. If I'm losing the game, I'll take a draw just because, I mean, I'd rather do that than lose. But, I mean, if anything, I'd rather win the game or lose the game, really. So we see bishop back to f8, opening the e-file for the rook, once we see exchanges. So we have a4, pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4. We have h6. If we were to have a situation where the knight would come down here at some point, we don't necessarily want to get, pinned on this diagonal here. So bishop comes back to c2, and then immediately we have knight to b4. And this is where the tucking of the bishop comes into play, like I was talking about earlier. Bishop comes back to b1. So as you guys can see, I mean, we have a nice, we have these bishops pointing in nice directions and stuff like that. So, the position is somewhat open. So, I mean, it's looking pretty legitimate. We do have c5, and then we have d5. And this is a really nice move just because it basically just like shuts this bishop out of the game. As you guys can see, this bishop is, biting on this, very strong diagonal. So it's not, the best piece at the moment now. So knight comes back to d7. We have a rook to a3. And we see c4. And for me personally, this position kind of like, I play, I'm a d4 type guy now. So I do end up playing a lot of the Banco Gambit, which the Banco Gambit, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're like low rated or if you're like world champion, the Banco Gambit is completely lost for black. But it causes problems that you do have to solve as white. But once you can solve those problems, it's just completely lost for black. A lot of the times, I'll get in positions where rook to a3 is very common. Black will try to do like a knight to g4, knight to e5 situation and push c4 so that they can try to plop their knight down in here and just have like a nice little outpost. This rook to a3 plus c4, it just kind of like, this is a pattern recognition position for me. There's a little bit of a differences in the position, but this is definitely like, kind of ringing some stuff in, but that's just me. Knight to d4. We see queen to f6. We see knight 2 to f3. We have knight to c5. We're trying to, as black, because this bishop is so poor, we're trying to, take advantage of the semi-closed nature of the position to try to get these knights rolling. And then we do actually have the novelty of the game, which is b3. This is this is the situation where you really don't want to take let's say pawn takes b3 because you will be allowing white just way too much. After knight takes b3, as you guys can see, this bishop is a little bit more open. All it takes is the pushing of a pawn, and this bishop is open. This knight is a little bit loose. If we were to maybe take here, the pawn takes, you're going to be looking at a passed pawn here. It's just a really nice pawn center. So, as you guys can see, that just gives up a little bit too much. So what we actually see in the game is knight b to d3. And basically black is saying, hey, man, if you want my knights out of here, you're going to have to give up some material and kind of give on your position just a little bit. So we see bishop takes d3, knight takes d3, and then this does inconvenience the knight. So we see rook to e3, and then we have a tempo on this rook over here. On a3 with b4. So as you can see, black, they kind of getting rolling just a little bit. The position is not bad for white at all, but it definitely brings up some complications at the board that are kind of hard to solve. So rook comes to a1. We see knight back to e5. Knight takes e5. Pawn takes e5. We do see knight to f5. But as you can see, white has gotten their passed pawn. So they are definitely threatening a d6, d7. Type of situation. If we can just kind of like get our pieces configured a little bit better, we'll definitely be able to maybe swing this rook over and put some heavy pieces behind the pawn, and it'll be a really nice pass pawn. So we have c3, and so like I said, I mean, this brings up the possible opportunity of putting the rook here. Of course, if a5 is pushed, the bishop to a6 is going to be an inconvenience, but we do see rook over to f3, and this is a really nice idea. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of threats, but putting this rook opposite the queen, is always like something that you can do. It's always one of those situations where worst case scenario, you probably should have some type of a discovery against the queen if you do put a rook opposite the queen or the king and stuff like that. So we do actually see the queen getting out of the way with d8, and we have actually reached a point in the game that if you do want to pause the video and see what white plays in this position, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So for those of you that, have noticed, the king is pretty much the only one that is protecting this f7 square. Like I said, the f7 and f2 squares are always, it's not that they're weak, it's just that they're not defended by very many pieces usually when these pieces start getting into play. When the rook tries to get on an open file here or just to maximize itself, it leaves this pawn undefended. When the queen moves somewhere, it's usually the king is like usually the only one that's protecting the square. So there are a lot of sacrifices and a lot of tactics and stuff that are involved in that, but that's not quite the focus of right now. But that's just something to keep in mind. The move in this position actually is it is knight takes h6, and knight takes h6 does kind of take advantage of the fact that this pawn is undefended, but more importantly, you're wanting to open the position up so that you can make this rook lift, this long rook lift be something like very legitimate, and that's what actually happens in the game. So we actually see pawn takes g6. The unfortunate thing about the situation is you can't really step to the side because you're going to be looking at this check, and you're going to be losing your queen, so we don't want to do that. And then coming down here as well, you know, you're also going to be gaining a tempo on the queen, and then after, you know, the rook tries to come up or something like that, you're going to clear the way for your queen to start coming in. So there really isn't a lot better to do than to take, you know, on h6, but unfortunately this is a really losing situation. So we actually see rook to g3 with check, and you know, we don't want to just block with the bishop because we're going to be looking at this. And then we're also going to be looking at queen to g4, and that is just super all she wrote. So we do see the king sidestep to h7, but that just allows the immediate queen to g4. And I think you guys can see from looking at it, there really isn't a lot that you can do to get out of this mate. This king is stuck on the side of the board. You know, this file is completely open. You know, there's really not a lot that's stopping. I mean, mate is on g8. And so you just kind of have to think, like, what can I do to try to prevent, you know, rook to g8? And it is actually in this position that Quang Liêm does resign the game. You know, like I said, I think you guys can look at the position and kind of see, like, hey, man, yeah, like, you know, this is just like not good at all. But more specifically, you know, when you get into this position right here, the computer literally gives like every single other move as mating other than this one move. There is only one move that you can actually play in this position, and it is queen to g5. So you guys can see, like I said, I mean, when you get into a position where the computer says, hey, throw this piece away, you know it's bad, because not only do you have the queen hitting this, you have the bishop hitting this. I mean, you can sidestep and the rook is hitting this. I mean, this is just this is just insane. So it actually gives this. You take on g5 with the bishop. Bishop comes back to c8, so trying to get a little in-between move in there, but the queen comes to h5. And this is literally what the computer is giving as the only possible prevention of mate. Because there's literally nothing else that you can do. So, like I said, it is after queen to g4 that black resigns the game. But if you were to go another couple of moves, this is the only way. Because as you guys can see, there is nothing else that either blocks this file or prevents the mate from coming. I mean, there's not this. You're looking at this. There's not a way for the bishop to come in the game. I mean, you know, you can't move. You can't move this bishop anywhere because, I mean, that's just mate again. So there's just nothing other than queen to g5 that prolongs this mate. You're still going to get mated at some point. I mean, there's just no way to survive it, but you know, it's putting it off for a little bit longer. So like I said, that is that game. It's a really nice game played. It wasn't too long of a game, 31 minutes. Or 31 games, sorry, 31 moves. Ha! You know, it was a nice, you know, it was a nice game. It had some nice ideas in it, interesting structures and stuff that came up for me personally. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's just because this is the phrase, long malakas at ang galing. I'm trying to say, you know, Wesley So is just strong and great. So I had a while back, somebody had actually put long malakas as a comment, and I translated it and wrote it down. And then also somebody wrote Angaling, and I wrote that down and kind of learned that real quick. And so I tried to figure out a way that I could like put the phrase together. So I have long malakas at Angaling. So I'm pretty sure that that makes some kind of sense. It showed me it was something different if I wanted to flip it, but you know, I think people will understand what I mean. So I appreciate it very much. Let me know if there's any tweaking that I need to do with it. And to get these good mornings real quick for my people in the Philippines, I'll say maayong buntag, mayad na agahan, naibag na bigat, masantos ya kabasan, marhi na aga, buenos dias, maanyong aga, mapian na uma, kapian kapuno dios, mayapa abak, mayad na aga, mapia agay, mapia kapa pizza, my big abukla, marja na buntag, marya may not, maupe na aga, kasanyangan si ilabi, salam, assalamu alaikum, merci to you guys. Appreciate you guys very much. And like I said, with my phrase, long malakas at angaling, let me know if I need to tweak that or if it makes sense, or just let me know what it sounds like when I say it, because I am trying to say just strong and great. Man. Okay, so I appreciate it very much. And makita tayo mamaya, and paalam to my people in the Philippines, and come on ban to anybody that is coming from Vietnam, and I will see y'all next time.